Lost in thought again. This is probably one of the most common questions that I receive, and just finished a conversation on it. So I just wanted to kind of elaborate a little bit on that. When we begin our journey and we come into wanting to be more present, to live as and in presence, in our journey of what we call mindfulness, it's very common and naturally so that we will experience this, that we constantly, get lost in thought. Right? That we've made a decision. Okay, we know now that this is what we need. There's nothing wrong in being lost in thought at all. It's thought is a creative way. That's our personal experience, to be able to kind of use thought and also be one with the thought. But there comes a time when we may be, being called right now to wake up, especially to certain patterns in the way that the thought is, that is unserving for us, right? So that's when these kind of things come up and we're like, okay, I want to be more present, because me just getting lost in and as thought is not serving me the way that I'm experiencing. So however this comes around for us, but the key thing that I was feeling called to share, which is what I was sharing today with a few, which this seemed to be the theme, is that first and foremost, to recognize that we've lived in and as the personal thought mind, familiar mind, for so long, for decades. This is the conditioning. This is the social conditioning, right from when we've been young. I mean, the intellectual, logical, reasoning mind, which has a role to play, but that's pretty much from where we function, where we are taught to function. That's what we've practiced, the unconscious habit of living from that space. So it's so natural that we'll go back to that. And of course, even one of our most, let's say, earnest intentions and decisions, New Year resolutions by the mind to, become more aware in this thing, it's common to do that. So I wanted to kind of break that up a little bit from my experience to share, which I've found to be very helpful. First and foremost, to recognize that the one who makes the decision, sets the intention, is the same mind that is creating the situation itself. To become aware of that. Because the nature of this familiar, outward facing, five sensory mind is to flit, is to go outwards and go on. So it is going to get lost. That is the one that has created, right? That's what we're trying to change, as in we realize that we're ready for that. So to recognize that is why I'm going to forget in spite of making the resolution. That is why, even though I've decided a few minutes later, I'm going to be gone. So once you understand the nature of mind, this is nature, then you find a little bit of peace. Okay, that's what it does. Right? And the key thing in this that I want to name, because this is something that comes up so often for us, is that to really recognize that through this journey, to have a lot of compassion, especially in this part where we are identified and we're living as the personal, this familiar mind, it has a narrative. And if that narrative, the way that we've been conditioned, holds this kind of, there's this sharpness of a personal will, which comes in with its judgments and says, we're not doing enough, or we're not efforted enough, or we're not tried enough, or, and then makes a narrative that, I can't do this, this is how I am, whatever, all that thing. So it's just thoughts that we're thinking and then we're identifying ourselves with. So once we see that, it's to have a lot of, this is why when we're in the personal, concepts really are needed, such as courage, compassion, patience. It's all for the personal mind, the personal experience. And it's needed because it really gives us a space to stand on. So to really know, and this is my lived experience, that when we see the nature of manifested consciousness, mind, we will realize this, that no matter what any thought might say, we are always doing the best that we know how. That's the deeper truth. Although at the surface level, what the familiar mind may see may not think or agree with it. But we are always doing the best we know how and doing what in that moment serves us. And knowing this, gives us that space. And especially this whole journey at all point, wherever we might be, is a journey of growth. So it's going to be changing, right? It's going to be about change and growth. And that means it's so key for us to, as wherever possible, whenever possible, at whatever level, to stand in this space of giving ourselves the grace as much as possible. That makes this journey easeful, peaceful, even joyful, and actually, I would say eventually funny. Because you see, this is the nature of the mind. It's actually funny, So to stand in that space, give grace. This is just the vibratory frequency of the mind. That's it. And to stand in that space, come back to that space, and say, okay, begin again. So this is something that I really want to share, because this is so pivotal. So I really feel like this journey can be much more easier than we make it out to be. So that is what I want to say. If you ever trip on that again, watch this again if you need to. But remember that no matter where you are, what you are doing. And our intentions that we come from are true. The mind that is flitting, the best intention that it can put and do, it is doing. So that was one of the first things. The second thing, which is very, very key, is to, again, the nature of the mind, to recognize that whenever we see a pattern, the mind sees, right? We're living as the mind. So when we live as the personal mind, anything that we do, we begin, like life meets life where it is. So all these practices, we can only begin at the doorway or the identity where we are. So as the personal mind, this whole idea, this whole intention, the seeing of it, even including the desire, all of this comes as the mind. Now this is the key to recognize that there are two aspects to us, loosely put in some ways, but this should make it easier. The mind that thinks, that's one level of understanding. This is the knowing that we move around as, right? Of course I know, I have decided, made decisions from my mind, all of that is like here, right? I just break this up for the body because it kind of is easier. So we live from here, and this is where it decides. But true change, transformation that we call the real shift, that happens at the level of consciousness. Every true change, real shift that happens only at the level of consciousness, which is at the level of energy. And that can only happen when thought and mind, feeling come together. That needs to happen. So no matter how well-meaning the mind is and its decisions are, if it hasn't happened at the energetic level, it won't happen. It will be a very shallow change. So, this is the masculine area, right, of the fences. This is the feminine. This is the energy aspect in relation to the body. So we can think about it, we can talk about it, we can know about it, but the shift will come only when it happens in the body. That is why coming into the body. Come into the body, and when it happens at the energetic level, this is also what they called as the meeting of the mind and heart. That's what they mean by this. When it comes together, the shift happens. So I want to offer this one practice which is so simple, as most of actually the practices are simple, happens at the energetic level. And it's so simple for us. Again, do it whenever. If you have a minute, 5 minutes here, before bedtime, in between segments, whenever. And this practice is what I call as going headless. And for me, because I'm a visual person, I like to have all this. For me, it's like inspired from this Devi, goddess Chinnamasta, who is one of the 10 goddesses of Mahavidya in the Tantric tradition. So, if you see her, Chinnamasta, her head, she's the headless. Right? Many people say, so when you cut this off, and this, I want us to experience this a little bit together. So let's just close our eyes. Let's take our attention away from wherever it has been and bring it to the breath. Nothing to do, just observe the breath breathing the body. I want to mention something here. The breath, the mind, the body are intricately connected. You'll notice that if the mind is active, the more further out the mind is in time, space, thinking, the shallower the breath. So we live literally energetically only from here. For me, it's like I sense it as if I'm the ocean, then the more in the mind I am here, I just am in the waves. It's all this movement and the wind of life and the world flitting just on top. So I find my attention pulled in 10 different ways, and it's just here. The breath is shallow. All this is below. This is a disconnect. I live not from my whole intuitive self. I just live from here. Just the top. This is the conscious mind, and this is what you would call the subconscious or the unconscious. The feminine that is hidden underneath. But just this simple practice of being with the breath, right? And we can do this anywhere. At a stoplight. So don't close your eyes. But I'm saying you can be with the breath. Waiting in the line. There's so many moments instead of being lost in thought. And again, I want to mention this. If you don't remember, you don't remember. But when you do, just coming back. So, whenever we remember, we come back, we're here. Instead of being in the thought, we're here. So, you'll notice with the breath, as you sit with the breath naturally starts to deepen. And very key that I want to mention, that in all the practices, everything that I share, and I think that's what we are being called to at this point, is to live as energy. That's what I mean when I talk about true self and the personal. To live as consciousness, as energy, is to recognize one thing, that all that is needed is to be aware. The personal mind that is the doer, that thinks it's the doer, wants to do. This can feel very counterintuitive for it. What do you mean just be? What do you mean ease? But any actual doing only happens at the level of consciousness, the level of what we are. Make another video on that, but so all even here in this practice, come to the breath, come to the body, just be. Allow the breath to naturally deepen. I want to share something here. These are the common questions that I get. So one is, because of how we've lived, our social conditioning of being more the top half, or maybe going through any kind of an experience where we have cut off from feeling the body, so we are on the top half. So many times when we begin this practice, to realize that there is a level of disconnect. So many times keep hearing that I don't feel anything. Some people say I can't even really feel into my womb, or it could be I can't even feel into my heart space, and that's fine. Whatever we can feel with the breath. See, when we totally are present and just being, that's the beauty of the nature of what we are. That, like water, you don't have to tell the water to flow down. That's its nature. It's the same way here. If you can just feel till here, then just feel till here. And that's why this practice can be easy. It can be wherever we find ourselves, we can be at peace there. So here, if you can feel here, just be with that. Feel the deliciousness of just feeling this. And what we'll start to notice when we really, there's a sense of just being, accepting, we'll start to notice in that ease, things start to open up at its own pace. It knows there's the sheer wisdom that flows through the body. It knows. So, it'll deepen. We'll start feeling parts. There's no need to rush any of this. Start feeling the body. Start feeling the breath will start to deepen from the heart till the womb. You really feel the whole body. This is the feminine space. once this, start deepening, just for the headless practice that I want to mention is just sense how it feels. Just have the question and just be. If I had no head, how would I feel? And you'll see that this part of the body gets activated. This switches off. This gets activated. It's a complete different feeling. It's more grounded. This gets activated, and then even a few minutes of this just being shifts. In fact, almost immediately later you'll also start feeling you feel like coming into your own, in the body. You'll feel that. It's a deeply felt space, and then the energetic shift happens. And then there is, we might do it sometimes just for a few minutes and we might think what's going to happen. That's how the mind thinks. There's so much more happening with these simple practices than what the mind can see, because the mind sees only the gross aspects. It only sees the after effect. There's such subtle changes, energetic changes that's happening. So that's why surrender and trust, I might not be able to see, but every baby step that I take is creating ripples and waves. And to stay in that space. So this so beautifully happens, and then move as this, as you start deepening into this, move through this. Sometimes through the day, if you can hold it on for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Here. Moving as the body. Headless. If you have a very creative, expressive, imaginative mind like I do, this is one of the most profound practices for meditation. From this space, the more you do this, you can naturally move into being. So it's thinking, feeling, the doorway is being. The awakening. Also, it kind of opens the door for all of that. And that's why for me, I find even practices like pranayama, if you do, it's you'll see after even the basic pranayama that we do with Kapalabhati. After you do Kapalabhati, again you've activated the womb area and all of that, you immediately move. Do Kapalabhati, end of it, your mind is still. You drop into the silence. So doing all these practices whenever, however possible. But this one was very, very, because this was something that I could really do easily whenever I remembered. Another key thing that I want to mention, because there are little things with this that can help, right? So one more thing that's coming up, I remember, is that, how we are used to, especially as women, wearing, we wear jeans, we wear tight clothes that fit here. And if you remember, in the old days, you would have these corsets and all that stuff that people wear so that you'd get a waist and all of that. But what that does is cuts off our intuitive wisdom. The feminine is pure intuition, our deeper wisdom. That gets cut off when we wear all of that. So to wear loose, as much, make sure this is comfortable. So we can access and move as the wisdom that we are. Otherwise, the minute we cut this with tight clothes, all of that, we don't even realize many times, thinking thought, we hold our belly and it's a constricted space. So if that happens, then the attention, Energy moves only here, we function from here. Something else to be mindful of. So if you're wearing tight jeans all the time, doing all of that, then kind of just be aware of that. And that also includes with other things that we might be suppressing, that makes this heavier. That's why to eat light, don't overeat. All that, these are practical, they help us come into our body, and then it's natural once you do. And again, all throughout all of this, no efforting, just be aware. Just being aware, our body will start speaking to us. She's always speaking. She'll start speaking to us, and she'll show us the next path, the next path, the next path. So this can literally, this is like a very simple energetic shift that you'll start feeling in the body that I wanted to share. The other thing that's coming up was, being in the body, this experience of physicality, of consciousness, experiencing itself, having this physical experience, sensations, what one may say, it's actually a deeply, deeply pleasurable state of being. That is our natural state, actually. Embodied natural state that we have forgotten in many ways. So this sense of pleasure is not the same as the pleasure that we think from our mind, that we want from outward, that's a different thing. But I'm talking about, this is what I'm naming as pleasure. Sense of embodied ease, and the feminine then, when we are in this, the energy, when I say the feminine, the energy, that's what we are, the new, the desire, it all naturally fills up and overflows from here. That's why I say to be in this state is to be pure abundance, an overflow of the love that we are. Manifested consciousness is love, joy, an expression of joy, a natural being of peace, embodied peace. All arises from here, and overflows. Today's, just remember, Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day if you are celebrating. So to me, this is the love. What the mind may hold as a concept of self-love, this is the experience of it. So in our rushed lives, wherever, however possible, just getting into the space. It's that simple. Coming into ourselves and then feeling, and soon we'll start feeling this ease in the body, moving from this ease in this body. And from that arises this unnameable source of intelligence, with pure inspiration, our soul expressing pure desire, what I call a sacred desire coming forth. And that's what we are here to experience, to manifest, to live, to love, to be love. That's what it means. So living that, I say the beauty of that which we are as life. This was helpful. Give it a try. Always happy to hear back as well. Much love.